officers, senior NCOs, junior NCOs, enlisted ranks, Mr. Fitzgerald, good morning and welcome. The Chaplaincy and Welfare Department has as its mandate to support command. We do this by providing the support necessary to nurture the spiritual, emotional, and social well-being of each soldier so that the soldier is fit to fight, fit for life, and fit for his or her family. In order to accomplish this, we have been doing, among other things, regular Padre Hour sessions with each formation, as well as conducting lecture and discussion series that deal with personal and professional development, as well as mental health support. World Mental Health Day, sponsored by the World Health Organization, is observed on October 10 every year, with the overall objective of raising awareness of mental health issues around the world and mobilizing efforts in support of mental health. The Jamaica Defense Force, through a collaboration of the Chaplaincy and Welfare Department and the Health Services Corps, is hosting a week of activities to highlight the importance of mental health. This week's activities began yesterday with a church service at the Garrison Church. Mental health is essential for a person's overall health. According to the World Health Organization, there is no health without mental health. Mental health is important and cannot be ignored. Prevention works. Treatment is effective, and people can recover from mental disorders and live full and productive lives. Mental health and functioning can be enhanced and quality of life preserved. Today's mental health seminar focuses on domestic violence and its implication for mental health. Research has shown that persons who have experienced domestic violence or abuse are at significantly higher risks of experiencing a range of mental health challenges, including post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, depression, anxiety disorders, substance abuse, and suicidal ideation. It is hoped that through this lecture, service members will have a greater appreciation of the effects of domestic violence on the mental health of all involved, as well as learn effective methods of dealing with difficult situations so that they and their families may live a more fulfilled life. It is our desire that these sessions will result in the engendering of a culture of preventative care within our ranks, our families, and the wider society. With that in mind, I would like to introduce to you our very special guest today, who will be sharing with us on the topic, domestic violence, implications for mental health. Fitzgerald Gayle hails from White Sands District in the parish of St. Anne. He is recently retired from the Jamaica Constabulary Force, though he doesn't look it. Gayle enlisted in July 1989 and served in the major divisions, serving and protecting the citizens of Jamaica with respect and courtesy. The rotations in the JCF, he believes, prepared him for dynamic service. Fitzgerald Gayle is a passionate knowledge seeker and holds a BSc degree in public administration and international relations from the University of the West Indies, and an MSc degree in counseling psychology from the Northern Caribbean University. He holds several diplomas and certificates in various disciplines, including social work, social psychology, and dispute resolution. These academic pursuits and training have helped our presenter to better fulfill his passion of serving and helping people, and especially at-risk youth. He believes that every child is one caring adult away from being a success story. In that regard, he has, for the past 7 years, been conducting numerous Boys to Men coaching projects across communities, upskilling youth in values, attitude, life lessons, homework projects, and providing general counseling. Gayle believes that real men are honest, open-minded, physically and emotionally present for their families. Mr. Gayle has also, through the Toastmasters Club, of which he's a member, led several youth leadership seminars with hundreds of children and youth, preparing leaders for any occasion, where they learn public speaking and listening skills. The participants learn while embracing the core values of integrity, respect, service, empowerment, and teamwork. A church elder, husband, and father, Fitzgerald Gayle will share his experiences and knowledge with today's participants. He believes, like Mahatma Gandhi, we must become the change agents we want to see. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us put our hands together and make very welcome Mr. Fitzgerald Gayle.
Major Friend, other officers, senior NCOs, junior NCOs, other officers, greetings. As I drove on your compound this morning, I was just refreshed to recall the days that when I was between 1990 and 1994, when I was at Mobile Reserve, I used to exercise with some of your officers, and they took me around this stretch. They were rigorous, but I love them for it. They have helped to make me fit for life, fit to fight, and fit for family. Those exercises were good. This compound has great memories for me, and so it's a pleasure for me to be here. This morning, as we're speaking about domestic violence and its implications for mental health, we're going to have this conversation, we're going to take you right through the whole gamut of what are the evil effects of domestic violence, who it affects. And I'll take you, just work with me, and we'll walk from the root right up, in the womb right to the tomb, how it affects people. It leaves great pains. It leaves great hurt, some expressed, some unexpressed. And it leads to so many things, which you'll follow me through the presentation as we go quickly along. So the statement of the problem so far is domestic violence is real for too many persons. And you'll hear what I mean by too many. It leaves physical scars. These scars may heal, but the scars that won't heal, that stays permanently within persons, are the mental scars. the psychological scars. They impact you socially and physically, and you stay and you grow and live a life of a wounded soul. But there is hope. So while we speak, we're going to be speaking about things, but then we're coming to the hope. And there are things that you may be aware of, some you may not be aware of. But let us reach a higher level, because in life we are in one of three stages. We are either growing, dying, or dead. You choose. We're either growing, dying, or dead. I choose to grow. So here's the description of the problem. Abusers are generally trapped by fear and learned behavior. There are two emotions. One is fear and the other is love. If what you do is not love, love is kind, love is patient, love is forgiving, love is all these nice things. But if you're not on the umbrella of fear, you're on the umbrella of love, you're under the umbrella of fear, and that will dictate to you. It has no satisfaction. It will lead you even to greater pains. The victims are suffering too, but so also are the abusers. And so we'll go through looking at what these abusers go through, the abused go through. They go through depression, anxiety, suicidal ideations, enmeshment, eating disorders. The presentation will further amplify that. So you will hear in the general terms that persons are speaking about domestic violence. In different texts in different parts of the world, or even in our own zone, we hear persons speaking about domestic abuse. It's the same thing. Or intimate, personal, partner violence, it's the same thing we're talking about. So now that we have established that, we're on the same page. So domestic violence, the abuser sets a pattern of behavior. In any relationship, their objective is to have power and control over their intimate partner. And this is a root. The family is a root, and you will see as we go along. So what is domestic violence or domestic abuse? It is, they use actions or threats or threaten of actions that they will do such and such to negatively influence another person to manifest. And it manifests itself in the physical, the sexual, the emotional, and the psychological. So these are what happens when the behavior impacts. Persons are frightened. They are intimidated. They feel terrorized, and they behave like that. They will even use the language. They know that they are manipulated. They live a life of hurt. They are always in the back because they are always so humiliated. They blame others. They are injured. The wounds are deep. Such are the impacts of domestic violence. So it brings us to the point to ask, what is mental health? And I like the World Health Organization's definition of mental health as being the health is a state of the complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of an illness. So it's not like a cough or cold. So if you don't have any personal sickness, then you can say, I am healthy. It's not just that malady, a cough or whatever. It goes beyond that. It encompasses the physical, the mental, and the social well-being. All needs to be well. So important to your health is your mental health. Very important to your health is your mental health. And so they went further to say mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities and can cope with the normal stressors of life and can work productively and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. There are some persons who look fit, well-read, speak up, and seem to be alert, but they are suffering inside. They need your attention. They need your love. They need your help to live a higher quality of life because they are suffering. So you'll see the signs, what to look for, and how to help people to become their better selves. So domestic violence resultants effects on the mental health. So we'll be looking at 5 aspects specifically today. The post-traumatic stress disorder, and we'll explain all of them. The depression, the anxiety, the substance abuse, and suicidal ideation. So in summary, post-traumatic stress disorder, they're always having a flashback to the thing and to the incident, whatever it is, and they, as it were, they're traumatized and paralyzed, and they remain there sometimes for a longer period than they wished they were. Depression is like a weight is on them, and it keeps pressing them down. Then we have anxiety. They are panicked about everything. They are very edgy, impatient, can't control themselves. Then it may lead them to take drugs, because as the drug users will tell you that it is like something inside of their brain that is scratching them, and they can't scratch it, something deep inside, so they get something to numb it. And then the suicidal ideation, they just have had enough and they can't take it any longer, so they start thinking of how to end it all. So we know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we see the physiological needs, safety needs, love and belonging, the esteem needs, and the self-actualization. If you notice, it is a step. Let's call it the ladder. If the child, though they seem to deal with the adult person, but we're looking not only for the domestic violence, we're looking at the children also. So though it impacts, so let us look at it from a child perspective and an adult. So let's look simultaneously. If the physiological needs to include water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing is deprived of a child, that child will not reach a safety need. They will not feel that personal security. They will not want to get employment. They will not get the quality of employment that they want. I jumped further up to love and belonging. Whereas they will not feel that love and belonging when they get there. Mentally, they may be retarded in this physiological state. And the self-esteem needs for respect and status, they may not even get there, not to mention the self-actualization. And an adult also, if they are deprived of the psychological, physiological needs, they may go through the motion, or they may accumulate age, but they may never reach the safety, the love and belonging. So for a child, and I'm going to focus specifically on a child for a while, if you remove the love and belonging needs for a child, because a child wants to feel connected and this is my place. They want to feel happy. If they are not feeling that, they will just remain sometimes in that mode sometimes for a very long time, unfortunately, maybe for the rest of their lives. Then we find another guy, another gentleman, Erik Erikson. He explained it as a psychodynamic student, a student of Sigmund Freud. He had added 3 more steps to Freud's 5 steps. So he had 8. And so he dealt with infancy going right around to maturity. Now, I like what he did. If a child learns trust, they can move on to autonomy. They can make some decision. They can do things. If an infant learns mistrust, they cannot go to the second stage of early childhood and function ordinarily. They are moving to they are moving down to the other stage of shame and doubt. And if in the preschool, they are going to go to school with doubt, they're not going to be able to function. Versus the child in a healthy state will now have initiative, will be happy. When they go to bigger school now, they have industry and adolescence. You find these people are very confident. They have an identity, and hello, I am present. In young adults, they are intimate. They know how to connect. In middle age, in middle adulthood, they have certainty. They can be present, and in maturity, they have integrity for what they do. If you follow the bottom rungs, you see from mistrust to shame and doubt, to guilt, to inferiority, and when they reach adolescence, they are so confused, but they may do things, but I'll explain to you how they get to do things. So, I'll give you an example of a friend, one of my clients. I call her Miss BB for the purposes of this. She experienced domestic violence in a terrible way. What happened? She grew up as a child. Oh, before I go there, let me go back to Erickson. I must point out that if a child grew up from infancy to age 7, when it is deemed that the character is formed in a stable, loving relationship, that child can function. If after 7, 8, after 8, 9, that child may have had, say, a stepfather, and the stepfather, stepmother may abuse, the child went to exist in a domestic relationship, a domestic violent relationship. The trauma will be impacting, but it may not be as great as though a child was born in the situation. So a child born in the situation will exhibit that fear, and they will stay stuck until they are helped. So BB was born in a rural parish. She grew up seeing her father abuse her mother. She's the first of 5 children. The beatings were so terrible, but she learned not to interfere, because at the early stage of about 4, she tried to stop Daddy from beating Mommy. And Daddy hit her. She said she will never forget, and she never loved that man again. So she had it in her. He sent her to school, but at age 15, he said, and I'll say as she said, "You're not come to nothing. You're going worthless just like your mama. You're not trying to come out to nothing. I'm not waste the money and send you to go to school." She just celebrated her 15th birthday, and to hear that, so the following morning she was about getting ready, it tore into her. She didn't get a chance to break with her friends or to say it. She just knew she had to stay home. So shortly after, she helped with the chores and the other children. So what he did, one evening he came home and he sat right beside the kitchen where he normally, and he said, "Carry my dinner, come." She carried his dinner and served him. He looked at it, tasted it, and called her, "Bibi." And he threw the food in her face just like how he would have done her mother. I mean, the hot food was yeah. And he went for something to hit her. I mean, she instinctively just drew the knife, and he backed off because he saw how bitter she was, and he said, "I must kill you." She knew the cruelty of her father and how he carries out his promises. She never slept in the house that night. She went and she slept under the cellar, so she was always looking to hear if he was coming. Then she said from that she has never slept at home. She's always gone to some bush or some space or some other places to sleep. So by the time she was 20, she has never gotten another night rest, and she has never left her knife alone. So by 20, she had high blood pressure. She had depression because she said, what is father? How me get into this? She had post-traumatic stress disorder because from the things that she experienced with her mother and that encounter with her father, she just realized how she would have been walked had she not tried to defend herself. She had, she's very edgy. She's always on the watch. And so she developed from those anxiety disorders, and she had suicidal thoughts. The only reason why she didn't kill herself in the early stage because she knew her mother would be torn if she did that. Now, she became, as you would imagine, she lived a life of being aggressive and defensive. She learned to distrust men because every man she saw him reflecting her father. And then she didn't have maternal instincts because her mind was on surviving and all these things. Though she has 6 children, at age 39, not one of her children could read. Not one of her 4 grandchildren could read. She said she didn't realize that she did not teach them. And she said she was not present. She was always trying to find a way to survive. Now, unfortunately, 2-3 weeks ago, her son, her 15-year-old son, the one I was working with from church for quite a while, and I was sharing her the tips what to do to help him. It pained my heart because I was trying to help him because 3 of her other children were in and out of lockup and jail and all these things. I said, work with this one so that he doesn't. From age 9, I'm trying to work with her, but she said, Uncle Fitz, I don't know how to do. And I did what I could. On Wednesday, I'll be going to the morgue to identify her body, the son's body. They beat him to death. Another experience is another lady, age 56. I met her some 6 years ago. She has everything. Her story is that she grew up seeing her father beat her mother terribly. By age 3, her mother had lost hearing in one ear. She had lost an eye, and she has lost a tooth. The beating was so consistent that one day, at age 3, the father was beating the mother to pulp, and the mother passed out. He got some cold water and threw on her, but there was no movement. So he thought she was dead, and he ran away. So he's abroad. Some years ago, so 5 years later, she got a stepfather who came to live in their home, had some other children. She was taking care of the other children as an adult, the older one. And that stepfather beat his mother, but he was a little more cruel than the first father. He had a place that he normally feed the fat of the thing at a tree root. And she said, as she explained to me, sir, we didn't know what he was doing. And when a large contingent of ants came, when he beat my mother and he said, shut your mouth, he would take her and tie her up in the ant's nest. And if she ever made no noise or tell anybody, that's how cruel. And if the children cry from the beating, they would be in the ant's nest, and he would come and he would poke the ant's nest, and he would watch them. But they said they learn quickly that when you're in that situation, you just keep quiet and the ants will. And so he would stay there and poke the thing. Such cruelty she endured. Plus, in the early stage when he beat her and when she's crying, when they see what the mother's experienced, what he did, he would run her down, hold her, and beat her, and said, smile. So she learned to smile. And even today, when she's having terrible things, she learned to smile. But sometimes for your colleagues, for your friends, or for persons who are experiencing domestic violence, look beyond their smile and you will see why. So she suffered low esteem. When she went to school, she just looked like a zombie, she said, the teacher. The teacher called the parents in, and the father stopped her from, you're not learning anything at school, you can't go. So she has been in depression from age 3, coming up to age 50 when she came to me to talk about something, about her son. She's defensive because she's learned to defend for the other children. She has post-traumatic stress disorder because at age 8, when mother went to market, he raped her. She said, unless I make it real, you can understand. She said she was a small girl and he was a big man, 6'2". What he did, when mother went to market, he tried raping her, it didn't work. But then he used some Vaseline and he forced himself. When she told her mother could do nothing. She stood frozen there for a long time. But she did nothing. Why? Because she was afraid for what he would do to her, what he would do to the other children. Because he said, if you ever talk, I'll kill you and your mama and whole of the picnic them. She had to give her life for that. So she developed anxiety disorder. She's panicked about everything. She has suicidal thoughts. She thought of jumping in the river. But why? How is her mother going to feel? She had a son at age 20, but she developed a thing by the name of enmeshment. Because enmeshment is when you're going through, the women are pregnant, and they're going through, and they said, all right, don't worry. I mean, you're hungry, they didn't provide any food for you. They dote on the child, and that every emotion is transferred to the child. And so when the child grows, the child is so connected to the parent. And that relationship, after that child go to a certain stage and said, no, I can't make my mother. So that child stepped in from being a child to say, let me take over and try to take care of the mother, try and get involved in every aspect of her life. So sometimes we see a mama's boy, a daddy's girl, and I'm not knocking only men because women are perpetuate domestic violence also. So she learned distrust of men also so she couldn't manage or stabilize the relationship because every time she's reminded about the relationship. And so she had a dysfunctional marriage status. The good thing about it, after counseling, she absorbed counseling, and so she was able to say, I can do something. And we worked out a plan. She was able to buy a house, and she got tenants, and she started learning to be nice. She saw a gentleman, and she said, I like you. And she went to the gentleman, and he told him, today she is married, and they are making a great difference. So domestic violence can be recovered from. Who is impacted by domestic violence? Persons of all age, race, sexual orientation, religion, yes, religion, whoever you are, whatever gender, male, female, you're rich, you're poor, you're middle class, you're tertiary level education, no education, whether you're married, you're single, or you're just dating, it possibly will affect you. And it's not necessarily your fault. I'll show you why. So, according to Dr. Herbert Gayle, according to a study by the United Nations, that's the first study about the gender-based violence in Jamaica, it says 27.8%, which is more than every 4 women that you see, experience domestic violence. Yes, more than 4 women, every 4 women that you see experience domestic violence. And we're looking at the age between 15 and 49, these are the reproductive years. Our own anthropologist, Dr. Herbert Gayle, said since 2000, 118 women have been killed from domestic violence. And he said it is violence against women start the cycle of violence, where children bully other children and partner with other children. Now, of note, it must be noted that though the world has a homicide rate of 9 to every 100,000, Jamaica far exceeds that and is 5 times higher than the world's average. It's over 5 times higher. Where the world experienced 9, we experience 48 per 100,000. He continued that 85% of the girls tortured or raped are expected to pass on this aggression to their children. 75 to 85% of mothers and teachers who were abused as children abuse children. Yes. He said 4 of 5 males who batter women, who beat women, 1 of these men are from a generation of abusers. So for every 5 male that batter women, 1 is from a generation, up to 3 generations of abusers. So I come to the point to say no man should ever hit a woman. No man should ever hit a woman. Do you know, when I go out on patrol, and I went out on patrol, and when you see a woman call the police, and when you see a big woman, 60, 70, 80-year-old, crying, having a broken hand, and they take them to the hospital and everything, and they said, no, I will not report it. They are afraid of what will happen. If they report it, they will not go to court. I mean, it is just so sad. There's so much you can do. And it breaks me when I see a woman cry, especially. Men can be victims too. Women are not the only victims of domestic violence and abuse. Men suffer also, especially the verbal and emotional abuse. But they are generally afraid for help. Earlier this year, I needed to do a presentation overseas. And I was searching for some information at all the police stations to find out when can I find something on domestic, men reporting domestic. Not one. I checked the history because the shame is real. People laugh at you, but it is real. It is real that men are really suffering. The women have some way, women who are domestically violent, they have some way of saying to the men. I remember this man was saying he was 70, and he was telling me a pain that he is feeling. His wife said something to him. He said, 30 years ago, my wife brought up to me, we were having something, he couldn't provide some money. And he said, big old man like you can't provide money. And your mama turn up in a burial ground, in a pauper. He couldn't afford the money to bury his mother in the earlier days. And so they buried her as a pauper. So, you know, to economize in space, so they said she's standing. It tore him for the rest of his life. And she said, moreover, you not even can last 2 seconds, 2 minutes, you know. And when you stand up and talk, people think so you're a smaddy. You don't even have a use. Eh? And so she called him like, you know what you means? Useless. She's at church, and she say, she's into, at this time, you will come and do. He went up there, and he always smiled, but what is he going to do? We go on. Signs of domestic violence, and I run on. The public embarrassment of family and friends. They undermine the accomplishments and decision-making ability. Oh, I made the decision. You wouldn't know anything about that. I mean, you can't make it. They use intimidation. So, well, if you don't do that, I mean, this woman, she said she was tired. And she said, okay, you're tired, all right, not a problem. Sleep. Shh. Sleep. Okay, sharp enough, good. So he's sharpening the knife, and he's testing his throat. All she could see every time she closed her eyes was that her throat was going to be cut. It is. The knife alone, every time he sharpened the knife, innocent or well, she knows that comes back to her. The post-traumatic stress, the tension, the agitation, the rough treatment, you grab, you push, you thump, you whatever, the stalking, showing up. Hello, you reach work early. I call your landline number. Do not call me. I call you on the landline, but you're not home. That means that you're not at work. She said, I'm work, why not call me on my cell? No, call me. As soon as you reach work, call me on the phone. Men do it, women do it. And if they call 12, they call that, they keep calling. So persons are positioned. That's domestic violence. They use drugs or alcohol, but you know, I didn't mean to beat you, but I mean, it's the alcohol that did it. It's not me, baby. You know, I love you, baby. They use sexual pressures. So you're not ready? Me ready now. Come. Where do? And they have to conform. They make you feel there's no way out of the relationship. They are the only one. They keep you away from family and friends. They try to prevent you from leaving after they do something cruel. I remember one day we were on patrol. The baby was crying. The neighbor was concerned but afraid because they always be the thing. The man wanted sex, but in the early morning, the child had just woke up. And what he did, he beat the woman, locked the woman in a room, leave the baby outside, hungry and naked. So she was going to bathe the baby, very hungry and naked. Baby start crying, mother in the bathroom crying, neighbor call. Can you imagine that savage? So he said, if you don't give in, right, that you want. So they lock you up somewhere and say, I'm teaching you a lesson. So the next time, So they blame you for how they feel or act. They never accept responsibility. So we have this cycle of violence. You can look at it after we're through. So they use coercion and threats. They use intimidation. They use emotional abuse. They use isolation. And they use the children to carry messages, so the children's mind are damaged. Tell you what this moment said. Tell you that. Tell you black and ugly papa this, and send the meaning message. So the children are damaged in that. So they use gaslighting. Gaslighting is this. And I'll just give us a few examples. The person is talking, and generally gaslighting is done in public. And the person is talking, he said, you know, I have no idea what you're talking about. So the person said, boy, feel small. I mean, and they said, you're overacting, baby. You're too sensitive. I mean, that's all I said. So they make themselves so innocent. And you're imagining things. That person who is told that, man or woman or child, they doubt their memories and their competencies, but that's how it go. That's how it go. But once they throw that cold water and they say, you know, you sound crazy, right? So the child, and can you hear yourself, sooner or later the children start saying that to mother or saying that to father. And they say, stop exaggerating the situation. You're the one in the wrong, and I should be the one who's complaining. You're just being paranoid. Come on, baby. I mean, let's move on. They never deal or accept responsibility. So the domestic wounds the inner child suffer. So once they are wounded or traumatized, I'll use those words interchangeable, the child seeks comfort. Sometimes you see the child, and you can watch how the person sleeps, and even adults too. They sleep in the fetal position. Because they can't get comfort versus the other child, they just lay down. They are very comfortable. They withdraw if no comfort is found when they are so wounded and the wounds stay open. Then when panic arises or something happens, another child would do a thing. Take, for example, a prized china fell and broke. Other child would say, oh, let's sweep it up. Otherwise, they don't know what to do. They freeze at the limited time. Their mental health is damaged. They develop unhealthy behaviors and prevent rejection or abandonment. And some of them start using drugs. I remember this gentleman, as I alluded to earlier, was at Patricia House. So I volunteered some time with them, and I understand, because having the pressures emotionally, psychologically, mentally, physically, everything, and they don't know what to do. Many persons resort to drugs. Drugs gives that numbing thing and give you a high, and it's the first they have ever felt so good in their lives. And they just want to stay there, and when they land, they go back. And it is not that they sometimes wouldn't want to go, but the memories keep playing in their head. But they want something in their head to just numb those feelings. And so many persons resort to drugs. He told me a sordid story about what happened to him, but you get the picture. So, unmasking Jamaica's aggressive personality. In Jamaica, in July 2016-21, just the other day, Dr. Herbert Gayle was given an interview to Dudley McLean. He shared that young boys learning fear, hate, and harm, which is a recipe for sustaining their tribal political violence in Jamaica garrisons. And you know more about garrisons. There are so many over our country. So they teach them fear and hate and harm. So in violent communities, children are taught to be violent in order to survive violence. We are not going to get away from that. And they learn through various ways: observation, imitation, coercion, persuasion. If they don't do it, you're soft, you're chicken, you're baby. And that's another type of abuse. And they get reward for it, they get punishment, they get instruction. But we have to realize that all of these may happen in the wider society, but it happens at home, because home is a major agent of socialization. And you know the poem by Dorothy Nolty. And you'd know the song if you didn't hear the poem. Children live what they learn. Children learn what they live. Show them the way to love in their hearts, and they will find a better world. Imagine on the other spectrum, as she started, she said, if a child lives with criticism, he learns to condemn. Do you know anybody who always condemn? If children live with honesty, with hostility, they learn to fight. If they live with ridicule, they learn to be shy. And if they live with shame, they learn to feel guilty. So speaking about the guilty, there are some persons who can speak only about the negatives. What is your child, your colleague, whoever is talking about? The base of their argument show about where their subconscious is and how they are being affected. Now, children in domestic abuse, it's a wheel. The children are so destroyed. Like yesterday, a lady called me to say her husband forbids anybody from visiting her, she visiting anybody, she working because she looked good at somebody she dressed good as somebody she's trying to impress. So she is a prisoner, but she's not working. He deprives her of money, of everything, and this has been for several years now. But since COVID, it has been intensified. Now, imagine how terrible this woman feels. So the parenting practices linked to aggression, the parents, they fail to monitor. They have this aggression, and the children learn from one parent. One parent is generally very aggressive. The permissiveness, the parents they just don't know how to correct deviant behavior, and one of the parents learns rejection. Dr. Janina Fisher shared, she's a trauma expert. She said what happened to children after their parents are abusive, they learn certain things, and I'm just going to jump here because I realize I have limited time. So in order to preserve their self-esteem, persons try to push harder to get things done. They disown that they have been so traumatized, and after a while they said, I mean, the good part is to say, you know, it wasn't so bad after all, and they manifest themselves in some self-alienation. They hate themselves, they're judgmental of themselves, they have internal attack, and their ability to take part in mitigating information. So she went on to say that they always are numb, they can't think, they're overwhelmed, they have emotional outbursts. And they're always acting out, they're always paranoid, and when they go too much and the body just shuts down, and you're supposed to know anybody from that. Some people from that experience. Now, in my Boys to Men program, unfortunately, when I do some boys to men between say between 10 and 18, the boys would come and we would train them how to be real men. You know, one of the things that they say that they want to be, they generally say they want to be soldier, police, or security. I say, why? Because they want to defend their mother, their sister, their siblings. I said, when you're defending them and they're safe, what will you do? I don't know. So in the forefront of their minds, they want to make a difference, but that's the extent of their thinking. So research suggests that between the physical, the sexual, and the emotional maltreatment, and there is bullying and depression, the post-traumatic stress and substance abuse. The abuse is, she went on to explain that the brain is divided into two hemispheres. One, the left brain and the right brain. The left brain has a way to cushion things and so that you can go on with your regular life and say, man, this is all right, and it's all right. But the right brain stores the trauma for as long as it is. So you always have to be fighting against the voices that you hear. And so your right brain maintains a hypervigilance, and you're always on the edge, on the go, so you have a predisposition. You are predisposed to have depression, because when you have flashback from the post-traumatic stress disorder, it sinks you in a depression, your anxiety about what else is to happen, and your brain is just in that. But the left brain just keep you going, everything is all right. So the person go about and to say everything is all right, and they go on with the dinner, the work, the school, and then but the other part of it, you're traumatized, the person is traumatized through that, but they go on. So we all have natural impulses to fight or flight. And so we can either cry for help, we can fight, but generally children who are in traumatized relationship, they fight at the first time, but they realize they're up against a very powerful thing, so they back off. So all that time they're looking, so when they reach generation 13, 14, they see they're looking now to flight. As soon as they can get out, they run. As soon, or sometimes some persons freeze, others just submit and just say, I work with that. So then they develop because they have heard that they can't come to nothing, they develop a perfectionist self in that I must get A's, I must get, and so they are functioning academically with the academics, but when pressures of life reach them, they cannot function. They cannot function. They're academically well, but physically they are so wounded. My time is up. I just want to, I'm going to leave this slide with you. Sir, can you just cause the gentlemen to get the officers to get the slides, right? The access to that. But I just want to tell you that there is hope. Try calling for help when you are in need of, when you know, if whether you or somebody you know is going through the phase of domestic violence. Call the police, and the numbers are here. I had some activities for you to do. Get professional counseling. The quality of your life will change significantly. Don't speak to somebody, gentlemen, who will laugh at you. Test the waters. Find somebody. There are some numbers here, and find an escape route if you're going through domestic violence. The escape route is have a backpack, somewhere in your drawer or something, but don't put the bag in it, or give it to somebody. And when you have to run, run. Your life depends on it, and the quality of your life. Domestic violence is real. Here are some numbers that you can call. Get help. And they're free. They will advise you. And you can do telephone counseling with a WhatsApp, just a phone call. It can be worked out. Ladies and gentlemen, domestic violence is real. If you have suffered, if you know of anybody who's suffering, you are the catalyst for change. Make a call. If you're going to stay fit to fight, fit for life, and fit for family, you have to make the difference. The difference begins with you, and you will stay resilient. Ladies and gentlemen,